The funeral flowers hadn't fully wilted when the calls began. 2 weeks after we buried Margaret, I was in my kitchen on a gray Thursday, steam curling from a chipped green mug Sophie had given me for Father's Day years ago. It felt foreign in my hands, like it belonged to another man entirely. Everything felt strange now. The house, my reflection in the hallway mirror, even my own voice answering David's relentless calls. "Dad, we need to talk about the house." His tone carried the same tight impatience he'd had as a teenager asking for cash. Only now at 38, he wasn't asking. "Karen and I think this place is too big for you. The taxes, the upkeep, it's just not realistic." "We've already found a buyer. There's no mortgage," I said flat. Margaret and I had paid it off 6 years ago, but I'd never told them. A pause. Then that short, dismissive laugh he'd inherited from me, though I'd never used it like a weapon. "Dad, please. Mom's pension barely covered her meds. We all know you're under strain." I looked out the kitchen window at the garden Margaret and I had tended for 25 years. The rosemary brushing the stone path, the lemon tree that needed pruning. Every plant was a monument to what I'd lost. "You're worried about me?" I asked. "I'm worried about what's practical. We could put the money to good use." "Sophie's tuition." I stopped listening. I could already picture him at their dining table spreadsheet, open Dad's house sale in bold at the top. I'd taught him numbers when he was 8, making change for the ice cream truck. Now he was calculating me. "You've been planning this for a while," I said. "That's called being responsible. We can't wait until something happens to you." "Thanks for your concern," I replied, my voice as flat as the lemon tree's shadow. "I'll think about it." Then I hung up before he could package my life into bullet points. The silence afterward wasn't the quiet of mourning. It was the pause between one hit and the next. I poured the coffee down the drain, my hands faintly scented with the rosemary Margaret once cut for Sunday roasts, handing me sprigs like small trophies. "Fresh from the source," Margaret used to say with a smile, even when she knew I'd been watching her work. The phone rang again, Karen this time. I thought about ignoring it, but grief doesn't stop chasing you just because you hide. "Dad," she began, voice pitched too high, the tone she used to wrap bad news in shiny paper. "David and I agree. You both think I should sell the house I built for your mother." I cut in. She pushed on. "It's for the best. You could move in here, finished basement, full bath, even a kitchenette. Your own space. Perfect," she called it. Perfect for them, maybe. "And the money?" I asked. "After paying the contractor, you could help with Sophie's tuition. Maybe help David with his new place. Win-win." I could hear both their voices in her rehearsed pitch. "Karen," I said, "when was the last time you called about anything but money?" She bristled. I told her it had been 2 months. Silence. Then, as if accusing me, "You've been sending Sophie money every month?" "Yes," I said, 500. For 2 years. Of course she didn't want Sophie to know. That might ruin the fragile story about the incompetent old man who couldn't handle his affairs. "I need to go," I said, hanging up before it turned uglier. The late morning light caught the dust on the console table. Margaret's glasses still sat on her unfinished paperback. My feet took me to her study where the lemon oil scent mixed with the faint trace of her perfume. Her desk was untouched, a pen on a yellow legal pad, the corner of an envelope peeking out. I opened the stubborn bottom drawer, pushing past old tax returns and greeting cards, until I found a pale blue folder, heavier than it looked. A sticky note in Margaret's neat block letters read, "If you're reading this, you need to know what's inside." I sat there, sunlight warming my face. For the first time since the funeral, I felt something other than lost direction. Inside were bank statements from accounts I'd never heard of. Small balances, all in her name. Then my breath caught a deed for a villa in Portugal purchased 10 years ago. No mention of me. A Lisbon law firm's letter offered to manage rentals. Margaret's note declined. Not yet. Keep private. More papers followed, insurance policies, all naming family. But one smaller named only Sophie. No mention of her parents. I leaned back, staring at the folder, the word private still pressing at me like a stone in my shoe. The scent of lemon polish seemed sharper now, mixing with a metallic tang in my mouth. Margaret never forgot things. If she'd kept this from me, it was deliberate. In the back of the folder was a smaller envelope dated 2 years ago in her familiar cursive. Richard, if you found this, I'm gone. And if I'm right, the calls have already started. They will circle you not because they need you, but because they want what you've built. The house is yours. It stays yours. I paid it off so you'd never have to answer to them about it. The villa in Portugal is for you, but not on paper. Follow the instructions in back if you need to disappear. Sometimes the only way to win is not to play their game. Her voice in my head was calm, certain. In the folder's back pocket, a typed contact list for a Lisbon law firm, a caretaker named Anna, and a key taped to the page. Next to it, her note read, "Trust Anna. She owes me her life." Long story. I moved through the house like a man in 2 timelines. David's graduation photo, Karen's old vase, Sophie's crayon garden, all suddenly felt like pieces of evidence. At the kitchen sink, the late-day sun turned the garden gold. I remembered telling Margaret the kids loved her, and her reply, "They love the version of me that helps them. The version that says yes." I'd brushed it off then. Now it sounded like a warning. That night, David called again. I ignored it. His voicemail said, "Dad, just think about what I said. We can make this easy for you." An hour later, Karen texted, "We'll come by Saturday to talk. Bring Sophie." Bring Sophie as if I were the visitor. Back in the study, I reread the insurance policy naming Sophie as sole beneficiary, dated after Margaret's diagnosis. In the folder's back was a photo of her and Sophie in the garden, both in straw hats, dirt on their hands. On the back, she'd written, "Teach her how to keep what matters." I thought about calling Sophie, but didn't. Margaret's note was clear: disappear, not explain. Near midnight, I locked the study door, placed the folder in my own desk's bottom drawer, and hid the villa key in the safe behind the bookcase, known only to Margaret and me. I stood with my hand on the shelf, the quiet pressing in. In the dark, I could almost hear Margaret's voice. You don't have to fight the way they expect. At dawn, I made coffee this time, drinking it, and sat at the kitchen table with a pad. 2 columns, what they know and what they don't. The second list dwarfed the first. As the sun rose over the lemon tree, I thought of Portugal, of Anna, and of disappearing not from fear, but on my terms. Saturday's pale winter sun found me in the garden before sunrise, frost crunching under my boots. By 8, the rosemary was trimmed, the stone steps swept kettle on. It wasn't for them, it was to reclaim my rhythm. At 9:17, tires crunched on the drive. David's black SUV gleamed like a blade. Karen was on her phone, Sophie's forehead pressed to the back window. I opened the door before they knocked. "Morning," I said evenly. Sophie darted up the steps. "Hi, Grandpa." She grinned, hugging me. I held her longer than needed. "Come in, it's warmer." David kept his sunglasses on until the kitchen. "You've been busy," he said. Karen's gaze slid over the counters, the anniversary photo of Margaret and me. "We thought it'd be good to see you, Dad, and talk." They sat side by side, Sophie drifting to the living room. David didn't waste time. "We found a buyer. Solid offer, more than it's worth. No more taxes or upkeep to worry about. I told you no mortgage. Taxes are fine." "That's not the point," Karen leaned in. "It's about practicality. You're alone here. Practical for me, or you?" I asked. David's jaw tightened. Silence stretched, broken only by Sophie's laughter. Margaret's voice returned, "You don't have to fight the way they expect." David filled the silence. "We have plans. You could be closer to us." "Free up," Karen finished for him. "We could help you find a condo near Sophie." I sipped my tea. "What if I'm comfortable here?" "That's not sustainable," David snapped. I set my cup down, the sound sharp as a gavel. "Do you remember the summer you were 12, David?" "When the roof leaked over the east bedroom, I spent 2 weeks fixing that roof," I said. "You were 12, David. You learned how to lay shingles." "What does that have to do with anything?" "Everything. This house isn't just space, it's work. Work I can still do." Karen sighed. "Dad, you're almost 70. You shouldn't have to." "And yet I can," I said. I didn't mention the folder Portugal or Margaret's letter. That was for later. Sophie came in holding a drawing: bright green rosemary, a yellow lemon tree, and a tiny blue house. "It's perfect," I told her. "You even remembered Grandma's curtains." She grinned. "Of course. Grandma told me to always draw what's true." When she left, I leaned back. "Helen wanted me here. She paid off the mortgage 6 years ago." Karen blinked. David's jaw tightened. "Why didn't you say that before?" "Didn't think I needed to." It was just enough truth to shake their footing without revealing the rest. They lingered, trying to push the sale. I asked about Sophie's school, Karen's job, David's golf game, each answer shorter than the last. At the door, David said, "Just think about it. The buyer won't wait forever." "I'll think," I said. Sophie hugged me. "Bye, Grandpa. I'll come back soon. Anytime, kiddo." When they left, the house felt quiet, but not empty. In Margaret's study, I looked at the photo of her and Sophie teach her how to keep what matters. The fight wasn't about the house. It was about teaching Sophie not to let go of what's worth holding. I called the Lisbon number. Anna speaking. Margaret Hale was my wife. She told me to call when the time came. "Then, Mr. Hale, we should meet. Soon." I hung up, feeling the ground shift this time under them. At the kitchen window, I watched the rosemary in the breeze. Quiet growth has its own rhythm. You can borrow it if you pay attention. On Margaret's yellow legal pad, I made 3 columns: what they know, what they don't, what I want them to think. Revenge isn't an explosion, it's a thermostat. First call after. Anna wasn't to David or Karen. It was to a name from my old Rolodex I hadn't dialed in a decade: Peter Alvarez Estates and Trusts. Peter had helped me once before, years ago, when Margaret's aunt passed and a pushy cousin showed up. He was steady, precise, allergic to drama. When his assistant put me through, he said, "Richard, I'm sorry about Margaret. Come in this afternoon. Bring whatever she left you." I slid the blue folder into my messenger bag, locked the study, and for the first time since the funeral, put on a collared shirt. Today I wanted to look like a man who still signs his name in a straight line. Peter's office was in an old brick bank, the vault door still in the lobby. His receptionist had kind eyes, offered water. I accepted out of respect for the ritual. When Peter came out in his navy suit, we shook hands, no hug. At the conference table, I opened to the house deed, 6 years old, my name alone. "Margaret insisted," I said. He scanned it, nodding. "Quit claim deed, notarized. No encumbrances. If anyone's promising a sale without your signature, they're selling air." He flipped further. "We'll pull the trust we updated 3 years ago. She removed the kids as remainder beneficiaries. They inherit real property only if you allow it. Only thing outside your control is a small policy for Sophie." Then he asked, "Either of them tried to act for you?" "David found a buyer. Showed up with a letter of intent." Peter's mouth tightened. "Good. 2 points: without legal authority, no one can bind you to anything. Even if you'd given it, you can revoke it any time. Anyone ignoring that does so at their own risk." He slid me a draft letter, names to be added, stopping all representation, future contact in writing only. Then a notice of non-representation for the county and certified mail. Final, not angry. What else is in there? Portugal, I said. I told him about the Algarve villa in Margaret's name, the Lisbon letter, the caretaker Anna, and the notes, keep private. Use only if necessary. Your life is not a negotiation. Peter leaned forward. Your wife was a very smart woman. I nodded. Truth didn't need flourish. We'll contact the Lisbon firm on your behalf. Peter laid it out plainly. Confirm my title as surviving spouse transfer if needed. Do you want this property to stay discreet? Yes, I said quicker than I meant. Then we set up a holding structure. Lisbon will advise. Here we'll create a revocable trust with a dull name title, the villa to it, keep all mail through my office. You want distance, we can make it. I liked how he said, we. Then 2 more items. 1. Credit freezes at all bureaus lifted only by me. Not because my kids would misuse it, we both skipped over that lie, but because word spreads when property moves. 2. Review all accounts in Margaret's name. If she meant for me to have them, we move them. If not, we leave them untouched. Quietly, I said. Quietly, he echoed. We signed letters. His assistant slid stamped envelopes across the table, more satisfying than any speech I could give David. Paper has rules. Rules make people careful. At home, I filed the carbon copies in my desk, not Margaret's. That afternoon, David's voicemail, Dad called me back. Don't do anything rash. We're trying to make this easy. Easy as if comfort was a leash. Karen's text followed dinner Tuesday. We'll bring Whitman's lemon chicken, I typed. Sounds good, deleted it, then sent it. You win by controlling the clock. Before the post office closed, I rented a P.O. box, medium-size extra key. Preparation disguised as a plan. The key felt warm in my pocket. On the way home, I stopped at the cemetery. I stood at Margaret's stone and said, they think I'm soft. They think grief makes me malleable. You did the hard part. Now, I'll do the rest. By Monday, certified mail receipts lit up my phone. Then a voicemail, Mr. Hale, this is Greg from Hawthorne Realty. There seems to be some confusion. Your son indicated. That was all I needed to hear. I called back after lunch, hit record, and said, there is no confusion. I own my home. All contact goes through my attorney. Don't speak to my children about my property. Don't come to my door again. He tried to sound polite, but presumption always smells the same. Of course. We only want what's best. Good day. I sent the audio file to Peter's office under a subject line so boring it could have been a weather report. 12 minutes later, he replied, perfect. Log. Strange comfort having your life reduced to bureaucratic verbs. Anna called that afternoon. Her English had a rhythm I liked. Her laugh skipped on the second syllable. You're Margaret. She said she saved me once. I didn't ask. People worth trusting will tell you when the time's right. The house is ready, she added. I pictured white walls, blue shutters. You come, I place fresh linens, lemons in a bowl. You will sleep. Soon, I told her. I need a week. I will wait. Portugal waits well. I booked a one-way to Faro connecting through Newark on a card Margaret had labeled, travel if we dare. No paper trail, no location sharing. Last time I set up my grandson's console, I saw how much these devices like to snitch. That night I walked the house with a notebook, not to list things, but to listen. David's boyhood photo spoke of mistakes we never told the real story about. Karen's college ceramics showed talent, but also her hunger for praise. Sophie's crayon garden. That was a future worth betting on. I tagged a few boxes in the closet just to soothe myself. Tuesday 9:03 a.m. The bell rang. Through the peephole, Greg from Hawthorne Realty, plus an older man looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. I opened only to the chain. Certified letters, I said flatly. I'm your son's attorney. the man replied. I didn't unchain the door. Greg tried to sound friendly. Maybe you haven't? I see fine, I cut in. Leave a card. They did. I let it sit on the console like a harmless moth until it eats holes you don't notice. At noon, David called. Dad, what are you doing? Greg says you threatened legal action. I promised it. Different verb. You're being ridiculous. This buyer is real. This is a good number. We're trying to... Who's we, Karen and I? Our families. You know what I mean. I do. That's the problem. Silence. Then, if you make this difficult, we'll have to look at other options. Conservatorships exist for a reason. It slid into the conversation like glass in soup. That's serious, I said evenly. Are you accusing me of incapacity? I'm saying we can't just wait for you to start making mistakes. I already made one, I told him. I answered this call. I went to the study, pulled out the blue folder, and opened the small envelope I'd been avoiding. On the front, Margaret had written, Independence. Inside a bank card, a typed slip, and her handwritten note. You hate allowances. Consider this a dare, not a gift. Use it to build a life, not to buy time. The boldness of her faith made my eyes sting. I left the card where the light could hit it, a reminder I still had a backbone. That night I swapped out the deadbolt, tightened the banister screws, and oiled the hinges. Not fear, just the comfort of locks and work that matters when it matters. After the house settled, I poured a finger of scotch I'd been saving for a celebration I couldn't name, sat at the kitchen table with nothing in front of me, and let the cleanest sleep in weeks take me. At dawn, a Lisbon number pinged. We have prepared documents to establish you as sole heir of the property. Please confirm when ready for courier. Paper moving for me while I slept there are worse lullabies. On my morning walk, neighbor Joyce waved no answers required. Back home, a package sat on my steps. No return address, just David's impatient handwriting. Inside, a condo brochure full of grinning strangers by a pool with a sticky note. Thought you'd like to look. Love, D. I slid it under the scotch bottle to steady a wobble. Useful, after all. Thursday. Peter arrived early, meaning on time. We sat at the same table where my kids once told me my life didn't fit me. David came with a man he called their attorney, Jeff. Karen followed bright-eyed and tired. Sophie wasn't there, and her absence felt like light gone out. Jeff spoke in that partner at a law firm way. We're here in good faith to discuss a path forward that honors everyone's interests. Peter slid a cease and desist across the table. My client's interests are honored when his ownership is respected. He hasn't listed his home, hasn't authorized anyone to solicit buyers. Any further effort will be tortious interference, and you will be named. David's jaw tightened. Karen's smile was more effort than warmth. Dad, we're just thinking long-term. So am I said. I started before you learned to drive. David leaned forward. You can keep the house if you want, but you can't expect us to carry the rest of what I asked. The burden, he said quietly. The burden of my life. My bills you don't pay, my choices you don't make, or the burden of not getting what you'd already counted as yours. He glanced at Jeff as if law could rescue him from words. It couldn't. Peter spoke into the quiet. There is also the matter of threats of conservatorship. He didn't look at David when he said it, which only made it hit harder. Peter's voice was steady. Those statements are recorded. If any petition is filed, we'll show proof of competency and attempted financial coercion. Karen's hand flew to her mouth. We would never. She stopped. David's eyes burned. I'm tired of this. You're tired. I nodded. Being told no is exhausting when you've already rehearsed yes. I slid a paper toward them, 3 neat lines in block letters. 1. I am not selling my home. 2. If I relocate, you'll know after I decide. 3. I will continue to support Sophie directly at my discretion. Any attempt to mediate ends all support. Karen's eyes glistened. Dad, please. I'm not the enemy, I said, but I'm not a resource to be managed. Peter closed his pad. Jeff muttered about taking time to digest. David left without a glance. Karen lingered. Do you have to be so cold? I don't, I said. I choose to be clear. Minutes later, my phone buzzed, a Portuguese number. We have courier documents for your postbox, the voice said, including a temporary authorization for the caretaker. There's also something your wife asked us to give you when you were ready. Thank you, I replied, my voice sounding like a man who knew his next move. I rested a hand on Margaret's old chair, feeling the worn leather. Paper couldn't bring her back or teach my children what she had tried to. But the right paper could hold a boundary. On the way to the P.O. box, I passed the condo from David's brochure. The sign read, Maintenance-Free Living. I laughed. There's no such thing. Either you do the work yourself or someone does it to you. I prefer the kind that leaves my name on the deed. The post office smelled of cut paper and patience. Inside my box, a yellow slip. The clerk handed me a flat envelope heavy enough to change a day. Stamps from Lisbon winked at me. The first page confirmed a small white house with blue shutters across the Atlantic was legally mine. Beneath it, a letter for Anna. At the bottom, a copy of Margaret's handwriting. If you're holding this, you are not lost. You are choosing. I set the envelope in the passenger seat where she used to ride, drove home slow. In the driveway, I looked at the old house, honest, worth the work. I thought about Portugal's Sophie's drawing, David's jaw, Karen's eyes. Then I picked up my phone and started a new message to Anna. Arriving soon. Please prepare the house as you would for Margaret. I sent it. A reply came instantly. As you wish, senor. Fresh linens, cut lemons. We will wait for you. Some victories are loud. Mine was quiet paper. Sliding into files, keys turning in locks, footsteps on stone at dawn. It looked like a man standing on his own porch, package under his arm, not asking permission to live his life. I set the Lisbon envelope beside the blue folder on my desk, past and future stacked neatly, the present in between. I left it on Margaret's desk overnight, like a silent lighthouse. I didn't need to open it again. Its existence already shifted the house's sound. Floor creaks felt like conversation, the furnace like loyalty. When you stop waiting for others to define you, your things finally answer back. Morning brought a dull gray sky and cold that made coffee taste like a decision. I drank mine at the sink, glanced at the rosemary, the lemon tree. Margaret used to say, a life is built from the tasks you stop resenting. At the kitchen table, I divided a legal pad into 3 columns. What goes, what stays, what travels. Goes David's old Italian leather shoes from a decade when he thought style could replace consistency. The knife set Karen borrowed for a Thanksgiving that excluded the cooks. Boxes of trophies and ribbons, childhood currency that didn't hold up. Stays the table marked with the kids' heights, Margaret's books with her notes, the piano she never learned to play, but polished anyway. Travels the Lisbon envelope, 1 suitcase. Passports her beach photo from the year we let ourselves be young. At 9:02, I called the moving company early enough to act late enough not to provoke. Rodriguez answered, his voice steady, like a man who's moved other people's lives and still calls back. We spoke in specifics, 2 deliveries, 2 addresses, 1 truck, 1 morning. Estate clearance, he asked. A correction, I said. You want them to sign yes. Sender is Richard Hale. Anything else? Don't be late. Let the timing do some of the talking. Windows between 7 and 9, he replied. I told Rodriguez 7, like the minute might obey. The rest of the day, I sorted what would go and what would stay. Boxes from the garage smelled of dust and half-finished plans. David's old room was first. Posters long gone, but faint paint squares still marked where his bed once stood. I packed his yearbooks, the stack of baseball cards he swore would fund college, the pale blue tie I bought when he decided a suit might make him a man. I found the letter I wrote on his 18th birthday, telling him courage was mostly showing up when the story wasn't about you, and placed it on top of his trophies. Karen's room sounded different when I opened the closet, like glass remembering sand. Scarves looped around hangers, a shoebox marked clay, full of newspaper piano books from the 6 months she begged to learn. I wrapped them with care, added her 7th grade essay about wanting to bring things to the table, and closed the box. Time rewrites meaning if you're not watching. In the hall closet, I pulled out Sophie's glitter-crusted cardboard stars. They went on the what travels list. Some things you don't surrender to a lesson. The house felt different, not emptier, just more mine. At noon, I bought packing tape Sharpie screws for the side door latch and a small safe. Not for cash, but for copies. Originals are overrated. The right copy in the right place can save you. Back home, I labeled boxes like Promises David, Personal Return, Karen, Piano Books Return. Sometimes the best answer to being treated like a resource is to give back what's theirs neatly, quietly. At 3, I called Peter's office to note the moving truck's arrival. It helps when someone on your side knows where the furniture will be. Fighting people whose Christmas photos still sit on your mantle is its own kind of lonely. Before hanging up, I asked for a memo, house unlisted. Not for sale. No pending transaction. Boring until someone needs to be bored into leaving you alone. By late afternoon, the winter light had that nickel tone that says the day's ending early. I wiped the table where Margaret and I once spent Decembers balancing our lives in numbers. Tithes, taxes, those little categories we pretended to hate but secretly liked, proof we were still steering the ship. I opened the Lisbon envelope, slid Anna's letter into the new safe, and made 3 copies of the Portugal certificate, one in the safe, one in the bottom drawer under old appliance manuals, and one in a manila envelope beneath the car's spare tire. My father always said, hide things where people are already tired. Dinner was over, salted pasta. Margaret used to say grief makes you forget kitchen math. I ate it at the counter, reading Karen's text, Tuesday still stands. We can bring lemon chicken. I replied yes, with a smile I didn't feel. Sometimes you let the other side think they're part of your plan. It keeps things civil until they're not. I slept in Margaret's study, the lemon oil still lingering even as her scent faded. Woke at 4:52. Coffee, shower, clean shirt. 2 sealed notes, one for David, one for Karen. Both saying I'm returning what's yours. I'm keeping what's mine. The difference is not up for debate. No signatures. Statements, not demands. At 6:57, Rodriguez's moving truck turned down my street. He shook my hand like a man who knows the difference between a job and a favor. Briar Ridge first, then Pine Avenue, he said. Deliver to the door, get a signature. If they refuse, take a photo. Timestamp it, your name on the note. They worked fast boxes from rooms that had been pretending too long. Karen's piano bench, David's leather jacket, trophies, the shoebox, with more newspaper than clay. I stood where I could see without looking, like I was watching a skill fathers learn. At 7:31, Rodriguez handed me a receipt. I signed, printing my name and the addresses neatly. The pen's drag on paper was oddly satisfying. As the truck doors closed, he touched the brim of his cap. We'll be careful. We'll be respectful. Respect is a good word, I said. It costs less than people think and buys more. Rodriguez said, then left at 7:39. The street swallowed the sound of the truck before the frost had fully lifted. I poured another coffee, feeling the house truer without the boxes. I slipped Karen's note into the box marked piano books, so she'd find it before the unfinished song. David's went inside his jacket collar, harder to ignore when it's where your mouth goes. At 8:12, Rodriguez sent a photo of David's porch boxes, stacked, my note visible. 4 minutes later, a shot of Karen at her piano bench, the box on top, her silhouette caught in the storm door. This is what it looks like when people get exactly what they asked for, and learn wanting isn't the same as deserving. I cleaned the counter, returned the Lisbon envelope to the safe, and listened for the tumbler's click. At 8:33, David knocked sharp, testing the wall. I opened the door only to the chain. "What is this?" he demanded, showing me the photo. "That I said is your life being returned to you. So you think you're clever? Not clever awake?" He accused me of being petty. "Accurate," I replied. When he called it insane, I said, insane would be signing something I didn't read because my son told me reading was a waste of time. He pushed a letter of intent through the gap. "This is a good offer. You're just proving a point. There are points worth proving. You're selfish." "Selfish," I let the word echo. "You can call me at 2. I'll be available until 3. Then I shut the door without slamming. At 9:05, Karen called. "What are you doing returning?" "What belongs to you?" I said. "They're just boxes. They're reminders. You don't have to keep them. Throw them away if you want." "That's part of the lesson." "Please don't be cruel." "I'm not. I'm being economical." She paused. Sophie asked why her piano books were on the porch. "Tell her they're hers, and that finishing something takes longer than wanting to." "That's not fair." Fairness is a longer conversation than we have today. The call ended without a hang-up. The kitchen felt bigger. The clock in Margaret's study seemed closer. Before noon, I headed to the bank. I moved a modest sum from the grocery account Margaret and I once shared into the travel account, the one tied to the card she'd called a dare. The rest stayed untouched. No reason to make the numbers dance just because I'd learned a new step. At the bank, I signed where Tone told left with my copy worth nothing to anyone but me, which made it priceless. At the post office, I found a small Lisbon envelope, slid it into the glove box without opening it. Back home, it joined its older brother on the desk. The plan had shifted from paper to action boxes. Gone people now holding what they thought I'd keep forever. Next came airline confirmations no one could find on a family plan utilities scheduled without a forwarding address. Duplicate keys, not to keep me out, but to ensure I couldn't be locked in. At 1:59, David called. 2 to 3, I said. "You've made your point. Not yet. I'm on schedule." "What do you want?" "I want to live here until I choose not to." "I want you to stop treating my no as temporary." "I want your realtor to stop treating my address like a sales lead." "I want you to know the difference between help and control." "And if I can't?" "Then courts. Transcripts, recordings. A judge asking why you threatened conservatorship for a man who can quote his mortgage payoff and annuity rate from memory. You recorded me, I preserved a conversation. One day, you always wish you had. So what now? Now we don't talk about the house again. If you want to talk about something else, call me on a Sunday and ask if I want pie. Pie. The kind that takes patience and pays you back slice by slice. When the call ended, I packed the one suitcase I trusted. Clothes that fit my age, the sandalwood shaving kit from our 20th anniversary, Margaret's beach photo passport, and the dare card. In the garden, I cut 3 lemons, set them in a bowl, and wrote myself a note. Lock back door. Water basil. Leave keys with Joyce. Practicalities keep a man grounded when he's finally doing the thing he's been threatening to do. At 4:11, the doorbell rang. Lighter footsteps, Karen alone holding the box of piano books with my note on top. "I can't take this," she said. "You already did," I replied. Her eyes brimmed. "Don't turn everything into a line that sounds good," she said, her voice breaking. She'd been my daughter for 37 years, but this was the first time she asked, without angling for an answer she could use. "Keep what's yours," I told her. "Don't mistake access for love." And if you want to bring something to the table, carry it yourself. She clutched the box tighter, walked down the steps without asking for help, then turned. Will we see you? Yes. When I decide, and when I say Sunday and pie, I'll mean it. She half laughed, half cried. Pie, she repeated. Drive safe, I said, closing the door gently. That night I walked through the quiet house, straightened the photo of Margaret on the mantel, locked the door, and set the Lisbon envelope back on the desk. Tomorrow my kids would wake up with their things in their own homes, not mine. By Saturday, the silence here wasn't grief. It was a plan in motion. At 8:03 a.m., a text from David, "We're coming by at 10. Don't make this difficult." I ignored it, brewed coffee, watered Margaret's basil, set lemons in a bowl, and wrote 3 rules. Breathe first, ask the hard questions, make them hear each other. At 9:59, tires crunched on gravel. David entered first tense. Karen followed, lips pressed tight. Sophie wasn't there. Morning, I said. We need to settle this. David started pacing. Coffee, I offered. No, he snapped. Yes, please, Karen said softly. You said settle, I reminded him. The house. You can't keep it. It's not reasonable. No mortgage, I repeated. Taxes, upkeep. It's not sustainable, he pressed. Karen added. Dad, we're worried about you being alone. You're worried about the house being mine, I replied. We found a buyer. Stronger offer. Letter of intent. I slid Peter's certified mail receipt across the table. Your buyer's been told all contact goes through my lawyer. There will be no sale. This is ridiculous, he said. No, you're angry because I'm making you say out loud what you want. His jaw tightened. Then we'll petition for conservatorship. Karen flinched. Karen's coffee cup hit the table a little too carefully. Then petition, I said evenly. Judges want facts, not feelings. Bring proof, we'll bring recordings. David's jaw worked, but no words came. Karen jumped in. We don't want to do this. We just want you safe. Close. In your basement, I asked. Let's be clear. I set my phone in the middle of the table. Sophie should be part of this. Her tuition and my house are connected. Don't drag her in, Karen said quickly. She's already in it, I replied, dialing. Sophie answered on the second ring, bright. Hi, Grandpa. Got your mom and Uncle David here. We're talking together. Oh. Her voice shifted. How's school, I asked, easing in. Fine. Why are we talking about it? Have you been getting the $500 I send each month? Silence. What money? Your account ending in 3842, direct deposit second business day every month since freshman year. Her breath caught. Mom told me. She trailed off. I wanted you to have what you needed, books, dues, without asking. David slapped the table. Sophie's voice cracked through the phone. Mom? Karen shut her eyes. I didn't want you to feel like you owed him. You wanted credit, Sophie said, tears cutting through her voice. You wanted me to keep calling you a hero. Karen's face crumpled. Sophie, baby. No, she started. I wanted control, I said quietly, because sometimes naming the truth is the only mercy. David stood, sat again. This isn't how we do this. You started it on a phone call, I reminded him. Grandpa, are you okay? Sophie asked. I'm fine, Em. I just sound decided. I'm coming over. No, Karen blurted. Yes, I said, but not today. Take a walk, buy something warm. Call me tomorrow. Okay. I love you. I love you too, I said. The line clicked and the room felt bigger with the truth in it. Karen rubbed her eyes. I didn't mean to, but stopped. You wanted to protect the version where you fix everything I said. David's anger returned. So this is the plan. Make us the villains. Keep the house and your pride, you done. Here's what's next. I slid them a handwritten list. 1. I'm not selling my home. 2. I'm not moving into your basement. 3. I'll support Sophie directly interfere and it ends. Please, Karen whispered. I'm not your enemy, I said. David shoved back his chair. Congrats, you win. This isn't a game. Everything is, he said, heading for the door. Tell your realtor to stop sending letters. My porch is for people who know my first name. He left. Karen stayed. I don't know how to fix this. You won't. Not today, maybe not alone. Are you going somewhere? Yes, not to a basement, when I'm ready, and it won't be a negotiation. Can Sophie and I come tomorrow? Yes, but leave money at the door. We talk like family, not accountants. Pie, she said with a small smile. Pie. Sunday. After she left, I washed the cups and put them back where Margaret had placed them years ago. At noon, the realtor left a thinly disguised threat on voicemail. I deleted it. Peter texted, all notices delivered. No further contact except written. I walked the house one last time that day. Margaret's study, her worn chair, my morning list. At the bottom, I added 4. Choose when to leave. I planned to leave like a gentleman on my own terms, with no shame and no permission needed. Late that afternoon, I called Anna. See you soon, I said. I'll open the windows, she replied, as if that were the most important task in the world. Fresh linens and lemons. Always lemons, I echoed. We hung up without ceremony. Old grief had taught me that big emotions don't need big performances. I made a small dinner for one, ate slowly, rinsed my plate and put it back in place. Later, I opened the blue folder with Margaret's note. If you're reading this, you need to know what's inside. I placed my hand on it. Thank you, unspoken. Before bed, I emailed Peter to handle all contact with the kids for a few days and asked Joyce next door to collect the mail and water the basil. I labeled an envelope Joyce, mail, and basil with the spare keys inside. Practicality is the bow on clarity. Lying in the dark, I thought about Sophie's voice catching on the phone, Karen asking, "What do you want me to learn?" and David's jaw clenched like armor. Morning would bring Sunday pie and maybe a moment where Sophie finally told herself the truth. Then a ticket, a bag, and a door closing, not about leaving, but arriving. The bowl of lemons sat beside my legal pad with its 4 lines. I knew David's confidence, really arrogance, wasn't built on skill, but on never paying the cost of failure. Margaret and I had shielded him from that. Now, I stopped holding things together. 2 weeks earlier, I'd closed a joint account Margaret had opened years ago, one David quietly used for temporary cash flow. I never demanded repayment because Margaret would say, "It's just money." But money teaches in ways words can't. When he found it gone, he called Karen. She tried diplomacy. "You know, he's been under pressure. The market's bad. If you could just help for a few months." "Pressure isn't bad," I said. "It keeps the pipes from freezing." Meanwhile, Graham discovered a clause in the partnership agreement of a property Margaret and I co-owned with an old friend one David assumed he'd inherit. The clause gave first right of refusal if either party sold. Graham made sure the partnership clause now worked in my favor, and I quietly sold my share for cash. By the time David realized it was gone, the money had already become something else, a locked portfolio of municipal bonds in Sophie's name sitting in the bottom drawer of Margaret's desk. Only Graham and I knew. Not David, not Karen, and certainly not David's network of friends. One afternoon, David showed up without calling, truck running in the driveway, shifting from foot to foot on the porch. I let the bell ring twice before opening. "Dad, we need to talk." "You closed the account." "Yes." "You know that put me in a tight spot." "I do. I thought after Mom you'd—" I let him trail off. He sat down. "Costs are up, jobs are down. I've got responsibilities." "So do I said. He left without shaking my hand. A week later, Karen's catering business lost its biggest client. Officially, they went in-house. Unofficially, Graham heard a quieter, more reliable caterer had been recommended by someone I knew well. I didn't gloat. This wasn't revenge in the movie sense, just balance. Sophie visited that Saturday. We pruned rosemary-picked lemons for Margaret's pie, fixed the shed hinge. She learned fast. Guess it runs in the family, she smiled. I thought about telling her everything, but it wasn't time. First, David and Karen needed to learn what life was like without a safety net. Airports make you feel replaceable, thousands moving to the same clock. Newark smelled like pretzels and disinfectant. I took the aisle. Margaret had always chosen the window. Alone, the aisle felt honest. Over the Atlantic cabin, lights dimmed, and we all floated in mutual ignorance, trusting what we couldn't see. I thought of Sophie's caught breath, Karen's box of piano books, David's fist on my door, and Margaret's neat handwriting on a sticky note. When the attendant asked about breakfast, I refused. She brought coffee anyway. "You look like a man who drinks coffee," she said kindly. It was awful. It helped. Faro appeared below white squares and blue water. The runway a thin strip between doubts. Customs was a quiet welcome. Outside, Algarve air was cool, then warm. A woman stood holding my name on a paper. "Anna," I said when she stepped forward. She didn't hesitate. I was grateful. She hugged me without hesitation, smelling faintly of oranges and clean laundry. "You're Margaret," she said. "Would be angry if I didn't welcome you like this." She'd pretend to be. I smiled, then later admitted out loud, like a prayer. Anna led me to a small gray car. We drove in comfortable silence past rolling hills, white houses, and the occasional crumbling ruin. She pointed out the bakery, the pharmacy, the olive groves, old ones worth remembering. We turned down a narrow lane between stone walls draped with purple bougainvillea. She stopped the car. "Home," she said simply. The house was smaller than my old one, bigger than the one I'd tried to shrink into white walls. Blue shutters, red tile roof weathered by storms. Anna pressed a warm brass key into my hand. "This is yours in law and in what matters." I kept my thanks for later. Inside, sunlight filled the rooms, a sand-colored couch, a wooden table, shelves of books, a blue-tiled kitchen with copper pots, and a bowl of lemons on the counter. She showed me fresh linens, a new mattress, and a terrace overlooking the Mediterranean, its blue stretching past the iron rail. The sea spoke in its usual language, "Keep moving, keep showing up." At the table, Anna placed a legal envelope in front of me, confirmation from the Lisbon law firm, along with a page naming her caretaker, empowered to fix what needed fixing. In the corner of a photocopy, Margaret's handwriting, "Trust her." "Sit," Anna said, handing me a pen. I signed, feeling less like I was claiming something, and more like agreeing with a truth that had long existed. "Now you eat," she said, bringing bread and a small dish of green olive oil with herb salt that you could taste all the way to your teeth. I tore the bread, dipped it in the oil, and realized I hadn't been honest about hunger since Margaret died. "You rest," Anna said when the plate was lighter. "Stay," I heard myself say. She smiled. "I live 3 houses away. If I stay, I'll start tidying, and then you won't feel like you live here." She set a small, indestructible cell phone on the table. "House phone. 4 numbers mine, the Lisbon office, the plumber, and the man who brings fish on Fridays. You'll remember the fish." "What about my American phone?" "Turn it off. You need to be here to be here." After she left, I put my phone in the drawer with the Lisbon envelope, not as punishment, but a truce. I walked the rooms, not deciding what stayed or went, but where things belonged. In the bedroom, I placed Sophie's glittery crayon star in a bowl on the dresser. In the bathroom, I thought of buying sandalwood soap, Margaret's favorite, not for nostalgia's sake, but because some memories deserve company. I slept deeply and woke to noon light. The market Anna had shown me was a short walk past weathered houses, a woman beating dust from a rug, and kids chasing a battered ball. Inside, bread rested in paper sleeves, olives glistened in bins. The man at the counter chose a loaf for me like it was a handshake. "Obrigado," I said. He nodded. Back home I ate standing, then carried bread, a lemon, and 2 cups to the terrace. The sea kept talking. I listened. In the afternoon, Anna knocked. "You're awake," she said approvingly. "Helen said I owe you my life for your eyes," I told her. She sat. I was 20. Thought I married a good man. Turned out he was just good at being charming. When he left a mess. Debts in my name, lies that stuck. Your wife came to the cafe where I worked and asked if I had a lawyer. I laughed. She said, "You have me." I told her I couldn't pay. She said, "You can cut my hair." I wasn't a hairdresser. Anna smiled at the memory. She took me to a lawyer, stayed while I signed, made her explain every line twice. She saved my name. Later, when my mother was sick, your wife brought soup, made the bed, and told my proud mother she needed practice before helping Americans. Your wife let people keep their dignity. That's worth more than money. We sat in comfortable silence, the kind neighbors might share on a front porch. Finally, Anna said, "I promised like someone who knows what they're agreeing to." I checked the shutters, opened the windows, after rain changed the sheets, so the bed remembers its purpose. It's not work, it's guarding. "Thank you," I told her, meaning it deep down. She stood and said we'd get dinner, matter of fact, like kindness didn't need a spotlight. The cafe on the square. "They know you as Margaret's husband. You'll tell them you're Richard. And then you'll tell them you were Margaret's husband. Both are true." We walked in the soft light before night. The cafe buzzed gently, tables full of people in no rush to stop living. Anna greeted the owner warmly. The soup was honest, the fish quieted my restless mouth. Over wine, she said half to me, "So you sleep?" I did. Back home, I lingered on the terrace, rolled a lemon under my palm, pierced it just enough for its scent to rise. I saw Margaret in that same spot, ankles crossed, a book open, but unread as she watched the world. I didn't speak, the sea was speaking for us. The next morning, I followed Anna's directions to the bakery. An old man set chairs outside with slow faith in the day. I bought 2 custard tarts, ate them with coffee on the terrace. I wrote Sophie a letter I wouldn't send about the territorial cat 2 houses down, the neighbor's laundry that swung like a quiet song, the sea loud at night, but gentle in the morning. I told her there was a seat here if she wanted to test it. I tucked the letter under a bowl of lemons. By mid-morning, the village started waving. The rug woman nodded, the boys with the ball pretended not to notice me. Anna texted 1 word, linens, and I sent back a picture of the made bed. That afternoon, I called Peter on the landline. "Everything's fine. Your porch is quiet," he said. "Good. Leave it that way," I replied. I told him yes, forward any mail from the Children's Council, and yes to the fish man on Friday. He laughed, the good kind of laugh, one without casualties. Then for the first time in 2 days, I switched on my American phone. A string of messages came like bad weather from far away. David, 3 texts and 2 voicemails. Karen, 1 text, "Pie Sunday." Then nothing until the next day we came. You were gone. Sophie sent a heart and a question mark. I answered her alone, "I'm safe. I'm where your grandmother wanted me to be. When you're ready, I have a chair waiting." Then I shut the phone in a drawer. Portugal could wait with me. At dusk, Anna leaned on the gate like it was a seat. "Tomorrow, Lowell Market. We'll buy bowls you don't need, but that makes soup taste like it belongs." "I've got a weakness for bowls," I said. "You have a weakness for things that hold," she corrected. When she left, I did the small chores, rinsed dishes, wiped counters, shook crumbs into my hand, and fed them to the plants. Outside, the lemon tree stood steady, unlike mine back home, probably bracing against the wind. Pride lives in plants that stay put and in men who learn to move. Before bed, I set Margaret's photo on the table. It belonged there in a way it hadn't since she died. In the morning, I'd buy Bowls salt and better words for thank you. Sooner or later, I knew my American phone would ring, not out of obligation, but because my voice would matter more than my absence. The municipal hearing room smelled of varnish and stale air. Fluorescent lights washed everything pale. I sat at the far end of the table, a manila folder under my hands, months of work ready to turn years of quiet humiliation into one last reckoning. David and Karen walked in with a lawyer I didn't know, young, polished, too confident. David avoided my eyes, fussing with his tie, like he did when lying as a kid. Karen looked straight at me, less defiant now, more calculating. Sophie was in the back row. She'd said she didn't need to come, but showed up anyway. Her steady presence was the only warmth in the room. The clerk called us to order. Mr. Hale today will be reviewing the petition filed by your children regarding the transfer and sale of your property on Maple Lane. Transfer and sale, polite words for they want you gone, not just from the house Margaret and I built, but from the last place I still felt like myself. David's lawyer began, his voice smooth and empty. David's lawyer spoke like he was doing me a favor. This isn't about taking anything away, it's about protecting Mr. Hale's well-being. I let the false concern hang in the air, then opened my folder. Photos, receipts, letters, and Margaret's tidy ledgers slid across the table. My well-being, I said evenly. I've kept that property mortgage-free for 6 years, taxes paid, repairs done. But that's not the point. I handed the chair one of Margaret's letters. She owned more than a house, and her wishes were clear. David started, "Dad, what are you?" I cut him off with a notarized addendum to Margaret's will. In it, she'd set up a trust for Sophie, using both the house and a 2-acre lot I'd secretly bought after her diagnosis. The property was no longer in my name or theirs. Karen went pale. You can't just, I can," I said quietly. "And I did. You talked about taxes. We saw 25 years of our lives." The council chair shifted. Given this documentation, there's no basis for the petition. Just like that, their plan folded. David leaned back, staring at the ceiling. Karen gripped her purse. Their lawyer packed up without meeting my eyes. Outside, Sophie walked beside me. "Grandpa, you didn't have to tell them about the trust, did you?" "No," I said, "but sometimes people need to know exactly where they stand." She smiled faintly. "You're impossible to beat." That night, I drank coffee at the kitchen table. The garden dark outside, rosemary shadows spilling over the path. Somewhere in the distance, I thought I heard Margaret's warm laugh. Tomorrow I'd prune and tend again. Not for them, not even for me, but for the promise we made when we planted it. Spring in Portugal felt like opening a window you didn't know was painted shut. The lane had its rhythms, the bakery at 7, the cat claiming his wall. Anna's knock with bread I hadn't asked for. Sophie's flight landed on Thursday. I waited at arrivals with the small sign Anna insisted on. It felt silly until I saw her light up, spot her name, and run those last 3 steps. She hugged me without apology. "You're here," she said into my coat. "I am." I answered into her hair. "And so are you." Anna waited in the short-term lot engine off elbow, hanging out the window like time was on her side. "Bem-vinda menina," she said, as Sophie climbed in, reaching back her hand like royalty. Sophie shook it as though she'd always belonged there. The drive from Faro was a long, slow breath. Sophie pointed at the sights, delight in her voice, when old ruins still stood. Anna narrated like a local guide, best bread here, best fish there, and the man with the tomatoes isn't angry. He's concentrating, When we reached the stone-walled lane, Sophie pressed her forehead to the glass. "It's like a movie." "No, it's like what movies try to be." The white house with blue shutters waited. She stared a moment, then whispered, "Grandma knew. She knew what you'd need." Inside the house met her gaze. She traced the bookshelves, felt the cool tiles, stood on the terrace with the sea in front of her. Anna set a bowl of lemons on the table. Sophie rolled one in her palm until the air carried its scent. "Are we allowed to be this happy?" she asked seriously. "Yes," I said. "We are." Lunch was bread that ignored moderation, anchovies in sun-rich oil olives worth poetry. Sophie winced at her first sip of Vinho Verde, then forgave it by the fifth. Anna retold the story of Margaret and the lawyer, this time adding how Margaret insisted on ice cream afterward because paper shouldn't be the last taste in your mouth when you fix your name. That evening in the square, I corrected the cafe owner, as instructed. "I am Richard," who was Margaret's husband. Sophie ate her first pastel de nata, like it was the definition of sweetness, tapping custard on my nose. Later on the terrace, she said Mom called. She's sorry for all of it. I told her apologies worked better before the damage. She still believed her. We spoke of her return to school. She surprised me with, "I might not." "There's a program in Lisbon, or Faro," she laughed. "I don't even know the word for salt yet, and I'm planning a life." "Salt is sal," I said. "Life is also sal sometimes. This isn't a thinking time, it's a doing time." She nodded, then added softly, "The money you've been sending? I want to use it for this. Not Cancun, not sorority dues, for Lisbon." Sophie wanted to use the money for bowls. I told her, then get bowls that hold something you need. She slept easily on Portugal time. I stayed up and opened the drawer where the Lisbon envelope rested, beside another thinner one I'd kept to myself. I'd waited until giving it wouldn't feel like adrenaline or a point to prove. In the morning, I made coffee and placed the envelope between her and the lemons. "What's that?" she asked. "A portfolio," I said. "Municipal bonds, set up after your grandmother's diagnosis. Boring, steady returns like your grandfather. Meant for a future that didn't know its shape. Maybe it does now." Her eyes widened, narrowed, then widened again. "You set this up for me. Your grandmother did. I just did the paperwork." She hesitated. "What's the catch, 3?" I said. "1, you don't use a cent to rescue your parents from problems they made. 2, spend it on learning and showing up, not on buying quiet when noise matters. 3, don't tell anyone the number. Just say, enough." She nodded, voice thick. "I won't tell them. Maybe Mom later if she earns it." "That's fair," I said. After breakfast, we bought fish and lemons we didn't need. The fishmonger called her Menina, and she laughed, knowing how to accept kindness without owing. Anna met us on the way back, handing me a small parcel. "For the girl from your Margaret," she said. "Give it when you know you've arrived in your own life." Sophie held it like it might vanish. Inside was a slim notebook, Margaret's kind, with paper that held pencil and ink. On the first page, her precise handwriting, "Sophie, if Anna gave you this, it means your grandfather has done something brave. Brave looks boring, paper's keys saying no when others want yes. Brave looks like your face and the faces of the women before you, who carried stubbornness as a virtue when it served love." I came to this house once after my diagnosis and before I told anyone. I sat where you are now and watched the sea. I didn't feel sad, I felt relief. Not because I was leaving, but because I knew I'd built a life that could be passed on without guilt. If you are here, it's because you're ready to learn how to keep what matters. Here is my only instruction. Don't let the people who love you most be the ones who make you smallest. Also, lemons should be rolled before cutting. They loosen up like people. Love, Grandma Margaret. Sophie turned the notebook over as if expecting another page. There wasn't. She walked to the terrace facing the sea, letting joy break open the places inside that needed breaking. When she returned, she slipped the notebook into her backpack beside her passport. We cooked the fish for lunch with bread and a chilled white Anna swore could make even bad choices look glamorous. We talked about learning not grades, but how not to mistake praise for purpose. I'd like to know that too, I told her. Later we called Karen. Her face carried a rawness I hadn't seen since she was 19. "Are you okay?" she asked, meaning me, not the house. "I am," I said. "Your daughter is too." She nodded, tears unhidden. "I'm trying. It shouldn't have taken this, but I am." "You'll need to practice," I said. "Like piano." She laughed. "You sent me my piano books to say that?" "Yes. May I come?" "Not now. Later. When I invite you." Sophie rested her head on the table. That was good. Hard, but good. "Most good is," I said. "If it's easy, it's cake." "Cake is good," she grinned. "But pie is better." "Pie is patience," I said. "Pie is on Sundays." We didn't call David. That wasn't punishment, it was weather. On Sunday, I sent him a photo of lemon pie next month. Sunday Tsekun Hosro. If you come to talk square footage, you eat on the porch. His reply, just K, was the modern way of saying he disliked everything I stood for. It was a start. The last steps were business. I told Peter I was making Portugal my primary residence, the U.S. house a life estate, Margaret's garden protected by covenant. We reviewed documents, beneficiaries, health directives, the fine print that turns into courtroom posters when families forget how to be families. I signed without a tremor. Anna brought more bowls from the market. Sophie learned the shortcut to the square, the fishmonger's dog's name, and how to ask for things without apologizing. She flew back to the States for 3 weeks to arrange her leave of absence, then returned with only a carry-on and exactly the right amount of herself. Karen came by my U.S. house once, leaving a small vase of flowers and a card I am practicing. David sent no flowers, but began texting Sunday photos, pie at diners, pie at home pie, that looked like an effort. In week 3, he sent a blurry shot of his hand fixing a cabinet hinge. Perfect. One night, Sophie read from the back of Margaret's notebook, not the private letter, but her short, secret-like instructions. Don't buy shoes that apologize for your life. If a man raises his voice, tell him his point is lonely. Plant rosemary where you'll brush it accidentally. When you let someone love you, make them learn your grandparents' names. When Sophie looked up, I told her, "Paying attention is the kindest form of love I know." She rolled a lemon, sliced it, and said, "I'm staying. A semester, maybe more. Not to run away, to run toward." Mom cried. "She wants to visit," I told her later. "Later is honest," I said. "It gives space for people to earn it." "And David?" she asked. "He'll come for pie. First on the porch, then at the table. One day maybe without an agenda. Time can be the lawyer for that." Anna appeared with 3 sugar-dusted cookies. "For dessert." "We told the truth," Sophie said, "and didn't turn it into theater." Anna agreed. That night, after Sophie kissed my cheek and went to bed, Anna and I watched the last light fade over the sea. "You're no longer arriving," she said. "It feels more like setting something heavy down," I told her. She smiled. "Tomorrow, Lowell Market. We'll buy a bowl you don't need." "I need bowls that hold," I said, and she nodded, as if I'd placed a sentence exactly right. Before bed, I wrote 3 letters, one to Peter, asking him to file the garden covenant, one to Joyce next door, thanking her for tending my basil, and one to Margaret, not because I believe in unrecognized addresses, but because writing to her makes me careful. I told her Sophie rolled a lemon without prompting. Karen used the word practice and meant it, and David sent me a picture of a hinge he fixed all by himself and how that made me prouder than any check he'd ever waved. I told Sophie I'd learned to be bored by the right things and excited by the ones that mattered. That's what wisdom sounds like. I signed only my name, not ours, and felt no disloyalty. Love that requires you to be smaller than you are is not love. Margaret taught me that. She wrote it in a note that began a plan and ended a war I'd been fighting inside for years. At sunrise, I stood on the terrace with coffee in the market mug Sophie had bought, its oufant always looking like it's about to tell a joke. The sea pushed and pulled as if it had somewhere better to be. I laid my hand flat on the stone table, thinking of the day David told me my life was too big for me, of Peter's letters. Anna's quiet trust, Sophie's shoulder against mine, Karen's flowers, pie, Sunday's lemons, and the rosemary I planted without bitterness in the place Margaret chose. Justice wasn't a gavel or fireworks. It was the balance of weight in my hands, a life that fit. When Sophie woke, she brought the notebook and 2 pens. Teach me how you make lists. There's no right way, only the way that makes you honest. Then show me. I wrote at the top, what we keep, what we let go, what we build. We filled the page with bread and bowls, rosemary and language, Sundays and pie. Then the harder things: pride, permission, dignity, distance, money, and what it isn't. By noon, the lemons needed rolling again. The cat claimed our wall, the fishmonger waved, the sea stayed itself. As shadows stretched, Sophie tucked Margaret's notebook into her bag. Let's go buy bowls we don't need. Let's, I said, and we walked the lane past houses that had already proven they could outlast whatever came for them without hurry, because there was no reason to.